Okay guys, welcome back. We're going to start with rebarreling a Mark 18 Mod O barrel. It's going to be an M4 CQBR build. Barrel just came back from ADCO. This was a Colt 14.5 inch Mil-Spec barrel we had cut down to 10.3 inches. And we're going to put it back on the rifle. Not a lot of videos out there of how to do a Mil-Spec barrel because most of you guys are upgrading your barrels and you're using different barrel nuts and different procedures. So we're going to do it the military way. We're going to walk you through how to do that today. Go. Okay, so to start out with, we're going to take our barrel and we're going to start putting some of our barrel together. We've got our slip ring assembly here with the delta ring, the spring assembly, the lock ring, and the military style sprocket. So we're just going to slide that on. Slides on just like so. Next, we've got to put on our handguard retaining cap. And that just slides on like so. Lastly, we've got our F-mark front sight base. Sometimes these are pretty stiff. Pre-fitted this one, it goes on pretty easy, but they can be a bit of a pain. Sometimes you have to heat them or freeze them or bang them on with a rubber mallet. That went on piece of cake. Again guys, these are all factory Colt parts, so you can kind of get an idea for how well everything fits. Now, these are put together as are all Mil-Spec front sight bases with taper pins. These pins are a little bigger on one side than they are on the other. And the easiest thing to do is just eyeball your holes here, and they're actually going to be bigger on one side than the other. Make sure you put your pins in the right way. And they go in small end first. And as they start to go farther into the hole, they start to really tighten up. You should be able to push those in by hand. And these will also help align your gas block with your gas port because they've been pre-drilled from the factory so that they would line up. So lastly, we've got to pound these in. Probably the easiest thing to do is I'll put it on a big rubber block like I've got here, and I use a big punch like this one. You don't want to slip. Small punches are kind of a pain, but a couple of good hard hits with this and it'll go right on. Okay, once you get your gas block installed, your taper pins are in place, everything looks straight like it's supposed to, we're going to take our upper receiver and we're going to add a little grease. This is Aeroshell 33 MS or Aeroshell 64. Again, as in my other videos, these are the only approved greases for the assembly of aluminum, and that's because of the anti-corrosion properties it has for dissimilar metals. It doesn't take much. When I took this thing apart from Colt, it had very little on it. So you don't need a lot. A little bit on the barrel threads, a little bit on the barrel extension is all that you need. Slide those two together, making sure that your barrel alignment pin in the barrel extension lines up with the groove in the upper receiver. Don't force this, because this is what will index your front sight with your rear sight and keep everything square. Okay, once that's together like so, we're going to put it onto our reaction rod. Now I've already cleaned the reaction rod. I'll make sure there's no dirt or debris on that as you put it all together. It slides right down and locks into place. Then we can start threading on our delta ring. We're going to take that down to hand tight. There we are. Now we're going to take our torque wrench. This is going to be torqued to 35 foot-pounds from the beginning. So we're going to start out with 35 foot-pounds and see how that works. We're using Mil-Spec tools today, so we've got a Mil-Spec barrel nut wrench. And I've preset the torque wrench at 35 foot-pounds. I'm going to make sure that the 3 pins of the wrench line up with 3 holes in the sprocket. We're going to take it down to 35. There it is. We know we're at 35 foot-pounds here. We're going to back this off 3 times and torque it down 3 times. Then we're going to see how aligned we are again. But I can already tell we're going to have to give it a lot more than 35 foot-pounds. Okay. That's been torqued twice. This will be the 3rd time. You have to be careful here, because if your wrench slips off, you can rip a hole in your aluminum delta ring real easy. All right, let's see how this lines up now. Again, we've got to line up our delta ring hole with the slip ring hole, spring hole, slide it all together. There we go. Yeah, and I can tell that it's just not straight the way that it should be. So we're going to have to torque this down quite a bit more to get it where we need it. So all we've got to do there, make sure we're locked up good in our barreling tool, our reaction rod. I'm going to come back on here. We're already at 35 foot-pounds, so we're going to take it as far as it needs to go 1 sprocket over and have that sprocket centered up. So we'll just put this on a standard wrench and we'll start giving it some pressure until we get it to spin around where we need it. Okay guys, looks like we finally got the barrel nut lined up with the spring assembly and the lock ring on the rear all lined up with the gas tube hole on the front of the receiver. We're going to feed that through now. Remember to kick it to one side like I said before. Rotate it down and forward so that your gas tube hole is pointing down, and you roll pin holes on either side to the left and to the right. We're just going to work that in until we can see it lining up with the gas tube hole at the front of the delta ring. Gas tube's in. We've aligned the gas tube hole up with the hole in the front side assembly or the gas block. We've got this really small roll pin here. We've got to install in place. I always put a drop of oil on there. Small pair of tweezers or forceps will go a long way on getting this started. Sometimes these have one end that's a little more tapered than the other, so make sure that you put the tapered end in first. Line it up on the hole right there. I'm not sure how well you guys can see this, but you'll get the idea. And then I'll just give it a little tap, not a big one. Just gonna start it, that's it. So now that's started in there, and we know that the hole's lined up. We can double check that with the punch. Glad we double checked it because it's not quite lined up. There we go. There it is, perfect. We'll be ready to drive this home. Small punch works really good for that. Have it flush. I have a larger punch here that's just slightly tapered on the end. It comes down to a little point. I'll use it to set it. Make sure they're even on both sides, and that looks great. Now we're ready to put the flash hider on. Back to the reaction rod we go. So this being a M4 CQBR, we're going to be using a Knights Armament NT4 flash hider, but this is also a suppressor mount. So these don't get shim washers or crush washers because those will loosen up over time, and they also won't line up square, and you'll could end up with a baffle strike on your $1,200 suppressor. We're not going to do that. So we're going to degrease the inside of the threads. Decrease the threads on the barrel really well. Make sure there's no oil on there. Clean those off. So these are the shims. I've already picked the one we're going to need. This is rock set. They send you enough to get your flash hider on there since you paid $100 for the flash hider. But I've already picked out the shim that I need. It's going to be this one. And I've got a big bottle of rock set that we're going to use. A couple of drops of rock set. Good to go. We'll start hand threading the flash hider suppressor mount on. There we go. We'll take our wrench and we'll square it up. That looks pretty straight. Okay, so this rock set will need to sit for 24 hours before you can put a suppressor on it. And I don't think we've left anything out. That's it. That's going to be the Mil-Spec assembly for a standard military type barrel. And we also threw in the assembly of the CAC NT4 and how to get that timed correctly. Rock set it in place using the supplied shims.